Hello everyone, I welcome all of you for this short and briefing webinar on Environmental Product Declaration, that is EPD. Myself Saravanan J, a Qualified ECO EPD Officer, Founder and Senior Sustainability Engineer, Carbon Figure Academy. So this webinar is all about the introduction, then environmental product declaration and further sections, why EPD, then finally we will be covering with commissioning steps in a EPD project. So to proceed with, the job market landscape is completely changing, especially post COVID. That is one aspect, but from historical perspective, there has been changing since the introduction of ISO 14040, the framework for LCA. So as per World Economic Forum, we have been listed like fastest growing and declining jobs by the year 2030. So we don't need to worry about the declining one. Let's focus on the fastest growing jobs. So there are some 15 numbers has been listed, and surprisingly, environmental engineers and related professionals ranked at 12. So that is a very big margin. So when I was choosing environmental engineering in postgraduate in 2013, some 10 years 12 years back, everybody would say, usually say, so yeah, good, environmental engineering, it's good, but you don't have scope in India. You can expect a good scope and with decent salary only in abroad, right? But after these many years, seeing that environmental engineers as listed under fastest growing jobs is a kind of a good thing for me and for the different other perspective overall. So apart from job profile, what's the specific skill set, top 10 specific skill set which is keep on growing, and it is going to be very vital by the year 2030. So we have 10 different lists, and again environmental stewardship as a skill is being listed at 10. So environmental stewardship, cumulatively, can be called or collectively can be mentioned as, so it includes the ability to design your own operations wherever you belong, maybe, right? So with respect to the cause and effect around environmental resources and its impacts. So whatever the profession, the job, the work that you may do, it might be about coding or non-coding, hardware, software, banking, finance, social aspects, whatever it may be. So your operation, makes a significant impact onto the surrounding environment. So how you can able to understand, assess, and trying to mitigate them. So those club of skill sets can be called as environmental stewardship, right? So this is a major reason why this webinar is happening right now, and personally why there is an importance of knowing and learning LCA and EPD. So a sustainability, it's like a big ocean where I feel LCA skill is a big fish, right? So if you are an aspiring environmental professional, I would suggest you to go for LCA as a first priority, even though there are other related and much equally important aspects and directions are there, like GHG accounting, sustainability reporting, CBAM compliance. So a lot of things are there, eco design, right? So but still, I feel LCA serves as the fundamental skill set for all these different directions. So as in the first section, let's talk about the definition of environmental product declaration. So it's a type 3 environmental labeling. It is a voluntary, transparent, and science-based communication tool that provides a detailed, quantified environmental information about the product's life cycle impacts. So ultimately telling, it's a communication tool in the form of a PDF, right? Simply saying, right? Which completely describes about the environmental impacts of a particular product across the chosen life cycle. So it has its own history. So in the year 1997, so the first framework, the ISO 14025, especially focusing on type 3 environmental product declarations, was released, right? So then onwards, people started wondering about EPD and its development, progress, all those things. So eventually the launch of the international EPD system happened in 2003 at Sweden, right? In 2010, similarly from the US, Underwriters Laboratories Environmental launches an EPD program in the United States. So it's simply called as ULE. Then in the year 2010 to 13, the important initiative or step has happened, that is founding of ECO Platform as a not-for-profit umbrella organization for EPD program operators. So their job is to provide governance structure for the harmonization of EPDs and EPD program operators across the globe. So in the context of EPD, knowing ECO Platform is ultimately important, right? We will get to know about them eventually. So over the year, it has been keep on evolving. Initially, the EPDs were meant for construction products. Then people started adding more and more different product categories and subset of products under which, and out of the construction sector also, people started, adding more and more other sector products, for example furniture, footwears, machines, machining, so those things, electricals, those kind of products, so textiles, yeah. So eventually the span of coverage of environmental product declaration has been expanding since then, right? So currently it is like integration of EPDs into building standards, corporate sustainability reporting and regulatory frameworks has been happening, right? So we have different types, type 1, type 2 and type 3, because we straight away started that EPD is a type 3, so we should know what is meant by type 1 and type 2 eco labeling. So type 1 eco labeling is like, there is a manufacturer and there is a outlined criteria by a voluntary organization, both gets meet up, and the voluntary organization declares that the product from the particular manufacturer is a green product. So this kind of concept is called type 1 eco labeling. And for Indian context, the example, an important example for type 1 eco labeling is Green Pro, right? So Green Pro is a voluntary organization under the umbrella of CII and IGBC. So they declare some certain number of criteria. Some might be mandatory and some might be optional. So if a product manufacturer goes there and apply for getting a green product labeling, so they have to satisfy the required amount of criteria laid out by the Green Pro organization. So once that is done, they will give it, okay, this product is certified as a green product under our organization. So the certificate might be valid for 2 years or 3 years, right? So over that period, they may need to continuously being compliant with the requirements, and post that validity period, they might need to renew it again, right? So this and all completely based on the guidelines provided by that voluntary organization in general. So type 2 is like self-claiming. So there is a manufacturer and they produce products and they do some scientific activities within their premises and they claim, okay, our product is a green product, right? So that is your type 2. So type 2 is happening in some places and it may or may not include third party verification, right? So third party verified type 2 is also there. The non third party verified type 2 eco labeling is also there. So to bridge both of the things, type 3 emerges as EPD. So where the manufacturer gets their product, gets LCA done as per the guidelines and provisions by defined by a program operator, and the results gets verified by the third party independent verifier, and the final document of that verified and ensured LCA results is published as a document, and that is called EPD finally, right? So you can able to understand more than type 1 and type 2. Type 3 comes with more rigid framework, because even for doing the LCA there are certain rules and things you got to follow. That is called a PCR. We will talk about it eventually. Now I hope you can understand the difference between type 1, type 2 and type 3, right? So as I already mentioned, type 2, it can be third party verified, or it may not be third party verified. But type 3, whether it is meant for B2B communication or B2C communication, it has to be third party verified. If it is not third party verified, it would automatically fall under type 1 or type 2. So what are the different stages in a typical EPD production? So it is all about 5 different stages: search for a PCR, LCA, compiling EPD, third party verification, and publication. So search for suitable PCR, it's nothing but identifying the applicable product category rules that define the methodology and scope for conducting the LCA, not EPD, LCA. So these PCRs would be provided by the respective program operators. So even before looking for PCR, you should finalize which program operator you want to publish your EPD, right? So once you find the PCR, follow the guidelines provided there and conduct the life cycle assessment according to the chosen PCR, and quantify the environmental impacts, ensuring data accuracy through verification, right? So it is like verification at this stage is like internal verification or plausibility check, those kind of things. So compiling EPD, so program operator would be having their own template for an EPD. So along with the LCA report or background report, you have to compile the draft EPD and you have to submit it for third party verification. So independent verifiers approved by the respective EPD program operators would receive your application and perform the verification as per the requirement of again the same EPD program operator. Once that communication is done, then you go for the publication. So your particular EPD get registered first, then it is getting published. So once it is published, its validity is 5 years, right? So throughout the 5 years, if you have any updates, you can do it, especially when the difference in the reported impact results are changing plus or minus 10%, right? So in terms of standards, these are the different set of or layers of standards that you have to follow in the context of EPD production. So first layer is core standards. They are nothing but ISO 14025, talking about type 3 eco-labeling, then ISO 14040, then 14044, nothing but LCA. So sector specific standards, if you take, it's like core PCR people used to say sometimes, right? So it's like sector. So which sector your product may fall in. So accordingly, there would be some internationally recognized standards would be there to be followed. So for example, for construction products, you have ISO 21930, EN 15804 plus A1 and A2. Currently it is being followed as 15804 plus A2, and it raised C2.1 in the US, right? Then we have regional adaptations with respect to different geographical locations. Different requirements might be there because they may have their own national wise standards to be adopted. So when such ISO standards merge with the national wise standards, there may be some nuances and additional guidelines, so that you just accommodate both ISO standards and the national wide standards appropriately for your EPD, right? So those regional standards might be complementary PCRs, or any specific provisions made by the program operator. Then supporting standards, along with that core, we have supporting standards like 14020, which cumulatively addresses the different types of the eco labeling, and 14067, I think it is all about product carbon footprint, right? And sometimes we may need to have some assistance from 14064 as well, so which is all about GHG accounting, right? So this is all about the visual representation of program operator, where you can understand the entire ecosystem of it. So let's start from the top. So there is a manufacturer, they are producing a product and they just want to get type 3 EPD for their products, right? So they consult with the consultant, external consultant, or they may develop their own in-house team of experts, right? And they conduct the LCA for the product. Once they complete the LCA, they send it to the third party verification. So now all these three elements, like the consultant, doing the LCA, and performing the verification, all has to be aligned with the requirements laid out by the concerned program operator. That's why the arrow marks are double headed, right? So how this program operator functions, literally telling there are different committees are functioning background, and they are generating general program instruction and developing product category rules, eventually based on the market requirements, right? So based on the instructions and guidelines provided in GPI and PCRs, the consultants are advised and guided to perform the LCA, and the same way third party verifiers also being guided how to perform the verification process, right? Once everything comes into the picture, program operator publishes the EPD in the help of some publicly open portals. So across the globe, anyone can able to access and they can download the EPDs. So that's how it finally reaches the consumers. So now ECO platform is nothing but an umbrella organization who manages the different program operators, because program operators might be location bounded or sector bounded. For example, a program operator located in US, they are producing certain number of EPDs, and for the same product, for example, let's take a bricks EPD which is produced in US should be comparable with the EPDs of a brick which is produced in Europe or in Southeast Asia. So when it may happen, when there is a harmonization in the PCRs and guidelines, then only the comparability would be highly possible. So that is the job ultimately the ECO platform is taking care of right now, and they are slowly evolving, and they are slowly implementing different guidelines and requirements, so that the program operator can meet up the required quality, right? So there is a term called PCR, product category rules. We have already used it a couple of times in the previous slides. So we should understand what does it mean, right? So in this visual you can understand, for conducting LCA we have guidelines. ISO 14040 is the fundamental, talks about the framework, and ISO 14044 is the additional guideline or added guideline on top of ISO 14040. So which talks about completely how it is to be done. From 4 phases of LCA, reporting, assurance, everything, right? Including the quality requirements. So this is the LCA, right? Same way, on top of these two fundamental LCA standards, if you add additional layers of or levels of standards, then cumulatively that would be called as product category rules, right? So they are ultimately guidelines for conducting and presenting the LCA in the context of EPD production, right? So on top of it, what would be might be there. What would be might be there. It's a new type of grammar, right? So what would be there? So allied ISO and EN standards would be added. It might be about data requirements and module coverage for performing the LCA, and it may also indicate about boundary and assumptions, and finally the reporting format and allied requirements. On top of all these things, you go and proceed performing the LCA, right? So product category rules are nothing but a specified recipe for cooking your LCAs. So why EPD? So far I hope you might be understanding some introductory aspects about what is EPD. So now let's talk about why it is important. So under the concept of compliance and market competitiveness, we have different aspects like regulations, procurements, certifications like green building certifications, and obviously investor interest, attracting investor interest. So under the regulations, we have like EPDs help companies meet regulatory requirements like CSRD, CDR, CPR, EPBD, and Green Claims Directive. So all these are bounded with European Union region, but still might be spreading across the globe eventually in different forms and different names. And then in public procurements, especially in EU, US, Norway, and Germany, mandate EPDs for construction materials. So they made it mandate itself, right? Then certifications like Green Building Standards, LEED, BREEAM, DGNB, they are specifically allot points for using EPD backed products in their construction project. Then about investments, so major buyers and investors usually started prioritizing transparent environmental data, right? So that's very much important. So under the domain of environmental impact and transparency, so we have verification, very important aspect in case of EPD. Then it supports whole life carbon tracking. So it not only displaying the environmental impact of a product, but it's also transparently helping companies reduce the embodied carbon and operational carbon distinctively, right? Then it promotes circularity like material efficiency, recyclability, and responsible resource use, because when people need to display their impact, they would be feel bad about having bigger numbers, so they would eventually work on that and would try to reduce the number so that they would play it as their competitive advantage or market advantage, all those things. So they are all these activities indirectly direct into product circularity and better things. Then trust, very importantly, so complies with green claims regulations and eventually helping businesses avoid greenwashing. So greenwashing is nothing but you claim something green, but there is no scientifically proven data behind your claim, right? So to avoid that, when you do LC and follow all these steps 1, 2, 3, 4 and finally show up some the environmental impacts in the form of an EPD, then you gain trust from your stakeholders as well as from your customers. And it's all about future proofing and business growth. So it helps in resilience, future proofs businesses against stricter environmental policies and net zero targets, because the entire global countries are currently behind SDGs, because 2030 is the deadline for sustainable development goals. Afterwards, people may come up with different schemes, or they may extend the SDGs timeline. And additionally, many countries have declared their target for becoming net zero. So some countries it is partly 2030, 2050, and for India, for example, we have the net zero target at 2070, right? So obviously the businesses and manufacturers has to march towards those kind of targets laid out by their own countries, regionally and globally. So brand advantage, EPD backed products gain market preferences, especially in public procurement and green building markets, right? So why green building markets prefer EPD based products? Because there are certain points allotted for using them, right? So that is the legislation or legislation driven change, right? So that's the thing. So when a local government mandates a green building certification, then it's a policy change, right? So optimization, and the EPDs enables companies to refine supply chains, lower production impacts, and enhance brand value. Then finally, collaboration. So it's market leadership. When you publish EPDs for your product, and that might become the first kind of EPDs for that particular product categories, who knows, right? So it's a chance for you to become a market leader and to support others and grow up your business. Then finally, commissioning of an EPD project. So from a consultant point of view, we should understand what are the different stages exist in terms of an EPD project. So first, define the product scope, then data collection, then conduct LCA calculations, prepare the EPD report, third-party verification, register and publish the EPD. Then throughout the 5 years, maintain and update it if required. So define the product scope means, so first you should understand the product, which category it falls under, what's the type, all those things. Then accordingly you have to choose the program operator, and eventually you have to finalize which PCR that you have to follow, right? So once that these two things are finalized, define your functional unit or declared unit, right? So based on which the data collection has to be happened. So primary data, collect it from the manufacturing process. In the absence of primary data, you use databases like EcoInvent. So there can be a separate webinar can be offered on these primary data and secondary data and the entire data collection aspect of an LCA. So let me try on that. So in impact categories, right, once you based on the choice of program operator, there may be some mandate and optional impact categories would be there. So you please keep that in mind, and accordingly you have to choose the impact assessment method. So perform the LCA, define the boundary conditions, and calculate the LCA thing. It can be a software like OneClick LCA, Sima Pro, Open LCA, and Gabi. Sometimes we can use regional specific tools which would be preferred by those regional manufacturers. Like from Netherlands we have EcoChain Mobius, right? So you can do sensitivity analysis in case of any requirement. Then you prepare the background report or LCA calculation report and eventually convert that into the program operator provided template, EPD template. Like, so that is your draft EPD. Send it to the third party verifier. It has to be external. Then verification process may take certain amount of time, like typically 4 to 6 weeks. It may extend 4 to 8 weeks as well, right? So get the verification statement and complete the that draft EPD, then forward it to the program operator. So they will register it and publish it, right, with the required fees and all. So during the 5 years validity period, as I already mentioned, if it is there any plus or minus 10% difference you can able to see in the reported impact categories, then you have to update it. Or else if it is a very minute change, then there is no issues, right? So throughout this process, you have to adhere with respect to certain ISO standards like ISO 14025, 14040 and 4044, and based on the product category, the core PCR standards should be followed, right? So I hope all these things are pretty clear and things. So you can understand, like, during the commissioning of EPD project, different stakeholders, obviously the client, the consulting firm, and the EPD practitioner, the core person who is doing these LCA, answering the reviewers' comments, all those things. So it is like the client, the manufacturer, they have their own responsibility as much as the EPD practitioners. Like, so the manufacturers has to provide as good as like the data as good as possible, and EPD practitioners should adhere to the PCRs and the relevant ISO standards as good as possible, right? So it is like eventual and balanced responsibility of both manufacturers and the EPD practitioners, right? So this is the final key takeaways from this webinar. So EPDs ensure transparency. They provide verified environmental data through life cycle assessment. So EPDs support compliance, which is required for regulations like CDR, CPR and CSRD, and green certifications like LEED and BREEAM. Then PCRs enable consistency. They standardize EPDs for fair product comparison. EPD process, they have their key steps like selecting a PCR, conducting LCA verification and publications. So ultimately EPDs drive business growth, they enhance market competitiveness and support sustainability goals. So thank you. So this is just an introductory webinar on environmental product declaration. A detailed module wise videos will be eventually uploaded in Carbon Figure Academy YouTube channel. So subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you.